grab a drink, come to the front, and let's get into it. We have on the panel some interesting minds. I will allow them to take the mic around and introduce themselves. Real short, real sweet. Give us your name and what you do.
Hi everyone, I'm Felix. I lead business development at Paystack, which is a fintech.
Hi everyone, I am Flora. I am the Chief Operations Officer for Audio and Music Licensing Library. We are launching in September. And I am the Head of Communications and Community for TechinGhana. Yeah, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Aida Hayfron-Benjamin. I am the founder of Citizen Projects. We are a project space partnering with artists to produce exclusive collections of work, as well as a residency program and overall artist wellness type of program. I'm also a podcaster. I'm very involved in sports. And recently we added a movement studio, which adds to the wellness of the artists that we work with, named Lebanese Studio.
Hi everybody, my name is Eldad. I am a professional problem solver and middleman. So on one hand, I'm helping entrepreneurs, founders, and ecosystems like MEST, Ashesi, Impact Hub, people that are like helping entrepreneurs incubate. I'm usually working with them on the training side to help these entrepreneurs figure out, what to build, how to build this in the best way possible. And then I have a consultancy that works as of late with what we call boring businesses. So businesses in oil and gas, manufacturing, and we're mostly bringing technology, some creative communication and brand to help them reposition for the next decade. So those are the two lives that I live. Glad to be here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sheyola Nyo. I'm in Nigeria. We're a proud partner for this event, by the way. I would say I'm a go-to person for bringing founders, aspiring early stage founders, creatives, tech professionals together. I've been doing this roughly for about 3 years. And across Nigeria, we've done it in 5 cities. This is the first time we're doing this in Ghana. We did this last year in London. And pretty much the ambition is just to connect people in a level environment that is not too rigid. For me, I'm biased towards conference. Forgive me on that. But yeah, so pretty much, but Yellow Life is an event production company and team bonding. We help to bring work-life balance, into lives of employees of every organization because we believe it's very important to their productivity. So yeah, Yellow Life is what's it called, the mother parent of UnwindFest, and UnwindFest is the mother parent of Tech Unwind that brings tech professionals together, Creators Unwind that brings creatives to connect, unwind, and while UnwindFest is primarily targeted to creatives, founders, and builders, to also connect like this and enjoy and learn. Of course, most likely also learn from each other and network with each other. Nice to meet everyone.
Beautiful. You know how we like to do it, have a nice mix of people on our panel. We have representatives from corporate, finance, ops, music, visual arts. And so I know that we're going to have a very extensive conversation, and not only the people on the panel are the experts, the people in the audience are experts as well. So please do feel free to engage, share your experience, and then I'm sure we can not only share information with each other outside our usual bubbles, but also maybe collaborate after this conversation. Sunset's theme for the year is cross-disciplinary collaboration, and we've had it across different contexts. We've had the beautiful, where's Nubuke? Hi, Nubuke. Nubuke was on our panel earlier in this year. Nice to see you. I see some familiar faces in the audience as well. Senna, OG, Sunset, audience member, Kobina. Hi. Kobina we need to give Kobina a gift. Kobina has come for every single SunsetConnect. And today he's up in the front seats. That's a big deal. He's usually at the back, guys, I promise. And so I'm very, very excited. Hi, Zara in the back. Love to see you again. I'm very happy. Sunset is been around for a year now, guys. This is officially 1 year. So we're 1 year next month. Hi, Jason. So I'm very excited. I don't know if you can tell, I've been singing songs and people think I'm crazy. But today my energy is very up. The conversations we're going to have today is around wellness. I think when it comes to succeeding, not just as a creative, but as a founder in your own right, everybody in this room is a builder of some form, I believe. And throughout the conversations today, we're going to look at how we can succeed and improve our productivity and success chances as creatives, but also corporates. And that's what the conversations will be around today. UnwindFest, why would you want to partner with us to have this kind of conversation in Ghana? What does this collaboration offer you?
All right, okay. So I think I've been coming to Ghana since 2019, just for fun. You know, I just come, go. And on the last year, December, a friend of mine just told me there's a friend of his doing an event, and I'm like, okay, why not? And I attended. I think the Adobe Photoshop guy, can't remember, was exhibiting some of his work. And like I said, I'm very biased towards a very rigid environment. I don't like when a place is too rigid, you know, and it was sort of the kind of event that we do back in Nigeria. And it just occurred to me that, oh, why not? We can bring this to Ghana and also like create this experience and bring people to be able to rant and talk about the struggles they go through and behind the scene and how we can bring people together. Most importantly, to learn and to network. And of course, I woke up to Jason. I'm like, Jason, you know what? Let's do this. And just welcome with with open arms. I'm like, let's create same pattern. Here we are.
Something that always affects an ability for a creative to exit from their context is external factors that usually have nothing to do with them. They're stress factors in the context, not being able to navigate the external context that you're getting into. I know you said you're familiar with Ghana, but is there a way that partnering with Sunset has alleviated some of the concerns that you had versus doing it by yourself, coming into Accra?
First, I would say that in everything, partnership is effective. It makes things work. As they say, two heads is better than one. I mean, sometimes I bet to differ if one is very good, but I believe that two heads can actually make a bigger impact. So partnership is more like, you know, the things that could have probably stressed more to do is more familiar with the environment. Of course, there's cultural change. I don't know much about, you know, the environment, and if he's coming to Nigeria, he will need someone to understand what the context. I've been doing events in Nigeria for the past 4 years. I understand, like, you know, the things that he may not understand. We're just talking about it casually previously about African time. In Nigeria, African time is 2, 3, 4 hours, depends. And so which means that everybody's thinking, I don't want to be here early. But again, partnership for me, I've always understood the effect and the importance of partnership is to make life easy. And as long as our value aligned, and as long as what I want to achieve is what you want to achieve, and we can get it on. So that's pretty much the objective. The objective is to pull this together and make it awesome. And yeah.
There's a Founders Wellness report that just came out specifically on the African context. This was by Flourish Ventures. And they have a bunch of statistics that talk about the experience of an African founder in this context. One thing I found very interesting that it said 78% of African founders complain of it being a lonely job. Loneliness. We're in a loneliness pandemic, apparently. Like, everybody doesn't have friends. But Flora, I know you've worked with musicians, and I know music is a very there's a lot of collaboration that is necessary to even have a music career. From your experience working with musicians or in that sector, how have you seen loneliness impact productivity?
So I won't just take it from my music perspective. I would also take it from working with TechinGhana, which has run for over 7 years and probably the country's biggest tech event. So it can be a lonely journey if you allow it. I think I'll put it that way because there's always a way you can find help or you can make it work for you. I've seen and worked with founders, I've seen and worked with creators who see that if I decide to go this way, I might just burn out. So you bring in a team, and some people feel, okay, I'm not going to, I'll just use my founder for Ordeal, which is a music startup for an example. We were having a team meeting on Wednesday, and he writes music, he writes tracks. He is also a product builder, and he is the founder of everything. Now, we brought in a company to help with the back end, but he still wants to work on the back end. We brought in people to work on content, but he still wants to be there. We brought in people, artists actually, to sign up for a deal, but he has decided that he still wants to write about 10 tracks a week to boost our tracks. And on Wednesday, he just said, guys, you know what, today I'm going to admit it, I'm burnt out. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And we had to put in a structure for him. Now, he has a team that can write for him, but he decides to work on that. Now we take his daily activities and see which team member would tackle that for him. Loneliness is, it can be good sometimes, but then for a founder, it can disrupt your workflow. It can affect you, as you said, your wellness, your overall health. It can impact you. So working with the music team, working with founders, I've seen that deciding to get help is important. Deciding to seek for help is important, and admitting to yourself that I need help at this aspect is important, because once you're self-aware, you know, in fact, that is the first step to making things work. So loneliness can impact your overall workflow. It can impact even how fast the product goes. I would use Ordeal as an example again and say we were supposed to launch in August, but we had to move our launch dates to September because of some of these things. Yeah.
The reason why I'm kind of starting with this angle of questioning is because I want to introduce the notion that being able to proactively solve for burnout is more useful than solving for burnout when you found out. Imagine, Shay, if you already started, you come to Ghana. Imagine the amount of resources you would have burnt before deciding to collaborate with somebody. But you proactively solved for that. You know, you got the idea and you looked for a partner before struggling your way through it to realize, okay, you know what? New context, new challenges, it will be better to collaborate with somebody from the context, right? Felix, are there any ways that you have been able to proactively solve for
loneliness?
Yeah, I was going to say that and I realized this is not the panel for that, guys. Is there any way you've been able to proactively solve for the impact of loneliness on your productivity?
So, I mean, what I would say is the loneliness in itself is not because there aren't people around, right? At least what I've seen is you're a team of 4 people, but you still feel lonely. And, you know, I think it's a combination of sort of putting a lot of expectations on yourself. Like, I need to achieve this, I need to do this. And it's on me, right? I'm the CTO, so everything tech is me, right? The buck stops with me. And then, you know, so on and so forth with marketing and what have you. And so I think one is just being able to realize that you aren't actually alone, right? You might feel lonely, the experience is lonely, but you aren't actually alone. And being able to sort of recenter yourself, check in with your team and be like, hey guys, we're in this together. How can we support each other? What are these like support structures that we want to build for each other? And so that actually sort of speaks generally to the actual point that I want to make, which is around building a team, right? I think ultimately your business lives or dies by the team that you've built around you to bring that product or bring that business to life. And so you want to set yourself up for success by making sure that you are, working with the right people, not just in terms of skill sets or you're really good at tech or you're really good at this, but that team dynamic is very important. Being able to be vulnerable, be expressive, be creative, be all those things with your team members is really, really important. Because if you feel like your contributions are not valued, or if you feel like if you maybe speak on some concerns that you have, that you'll be alienated, you'll be made to feel lonely, then you're already in a position where you're less likely to succeed, right? So yeah, I'd really put it on the team that you build around yourself. Yeah.
How many people would you say on average you work with at a time?
How do you mean?
Directly, so the team that you do have, how many people on average would you say like the size of that team is? The reason why I'm asking that is I want to ask a follow-up question on maybe more practically some of the systems that you've built around your team to navigate these things.
I'd say we're about 5 strong. At Paystack we have a very sort of flat hierarchy, I'd say. So it's a lot more collaboration than sort of delegation. Which I think, has its pros and cons, right? The pros obviously being that everybody feels empowered to do the work that they do. They feel like they're a sort of a master and an owner of their sort of work stream. The cons is that it's almost like a game of hot potato where like you're sort of passing the accountability around because there's no like boss to tell you what to do, right? You kind of have to, just be accountable to yourself and to each other. And so building that can be a bit tricky, right? It's less about, again, authority and more about influence. It's more about getting buy-in from your team members, getting an alignment on vision. And so, I find that having regular sort of non-work specific syncs with team members, both as a group, one-on-one, can really start to build that. And you start to imagine what the future looks like, right? Like, where are we trying to get to? What is the cool product that we want to build? And get that excitement. And I think, excitement doesn't last forever. You always have to sort of re-up, get a hit of excitement. But I think those regular sort of sessions really help maintain that.
Speaking of hits of excitement, ladies and gentlemen, there is a bar in the back. If you want to grab something to drink. But I heard Eldad making a lot of sounds behind me when he was talking, so I think you're itching to say something. Yes, please, get into it.
So if you can remember everything they said, just write it down. But I think loneliness has 2 phases, right? If you're building anything, or you're a founder or you're a leader, there is loneliness that you will bear and must bear, and there's loneliness you don't have to bear, right? If you're trying to create anything or build anything, you're trying to literally will a vision into existence. And what I've come to realize working with founders is that there is a certain loneliness that comes with being the vision bearer that unfortunately nobody can share with you. That is yours, and it's forever going to be yours. Any quest to do away with that loneliness is going to lead you to accepting whatever the norm is or what everybody already thinks the future should look like. But by the mere fact that you are the founder or you are the leader, you're the one, it's either me or nobody else, right? And then it's the skill issue of not being able to differentiate what 20% of things is what you must bear because it's the soul of the business or what you're trying to build, and what 80% of things you have to give out to other people to handle. I think for me, that was the hardest thing to learn because I always swing to the extremes. Either I'm doing it all by myself or I'm just like delegating every single aspect of it. And like I've crashed and burned multiple times on both sides. Till I figured out, oh no. There is some things that is the soul of whatever it is that I'm building and doing that can't be outsourced, that nobody will see, that nobody will understand, and that's my loneliness to bear. Not even another founder will understand it. You could tell them and they look like they're crazy, right? And I think that's where a certain conviction about the future you're trying to create is important. But then, once you're able to differentiate what that 20% is, everything else is the skill of delegation and the skill of trusting people around you and building the team, like he said, right? And why I was kind of sighing when he said was like, the act there is influence, because a lot of people think it's authority. So why a lot of founders end up taking everything back to themselves the minute they try to delegate is they assume it's an authority issue and not influence. So they, give stuff to people, try to delegate stuff, and try to exert power on them to get results. And once the results aren't coming up the way they want it, they go like, you know what, no. You guys ain't got it. I'm just going to take it back by myself, right? So I think those two things are very important to differentiate. And like, if you're able to do that, it makes the journey a little easier, and you can start to get the help that you. So usually when I work with founders, the first thing is to figure out like what are the belief issues that you're dealing with that is putting you in the situation that you're in, like Felix said. So I think that was what was really profound to me when he said it. It's often the belief that everything has to be me. And that puts you in a position where you don't see opportunities, you don't see spaces for help, you don't see ways that people can make your life easier, and then you take all this things upon yourself and end up like crashing and burning, delaying timelines and things like that. Yeah, so I think those are the things I wanted to call out, which is why, yeah, but whatever they said, it's, yeah.
I think the research paper that I referenced by Flora Ventures said a lot of African founders experience a lot of stress because of the context within which they're situated. Most of the time, the problems come from external stresses, something that should take one step takes five, and now you're losing your mind. And that's why I appreciate the work of Aida Hayfron, to my right, because she is essentially institution building, right? There's something that she said in an interview with Armstrong as a response to one of their questions. She mentioned how communities of artists working together, making a living and developing a steady practice. She wants that for Ghana. Love it.
I did say that.
You did say that, I just read it.
So I think that quote came about on one of my first trips to South Africa, where I was just in awe of the type of artist communities they have and how they are able to create in solitude as individual artists, but not lonely because they are in community. So I would want to differentiate between like artists usually like to create in solitude, but not necessarily, no one wants to feel lonely. So Citizen Projects our business model is based on multiple collaborations and partnerships. So while we make our projects with individual artists, we're always collaborating with residencies across Africa, makers across Africa. We are trying to be pretty ambitious with the materials we're using, so that usually requires us collaborating with artisans. So yeah, I think to avoid loneliness, one has to really make an effort to make collaboration and working with people a priority. There's this quote that the internet has been passing around about how inconvenience is kind of the price you pay for community. I do think culturally we've been on the Drake, No New Friends, like anti-collaborative, like sharing pieces of pie with everyone involved in the project. And I think that is what leads to loneliness, is when people are selfish or don't see the value in having multiple perspectives. Maybe that just distracted me, sorry. If people don't see the value in having multiple perspectives, and I think for a lot of founders, rigidity also leads to loneliness. What's the one about being rigid with like the goal, but like flexible with rigid with the vision, but like flexible with like how we get there. Not the exact quote, but I think you can understand what I'm trying to say. I think having flexibility in the day-to-day, knowing that like the journey may not look exactly as you imagined it or with the people that you imagined it with, but once the goal is achieved, it's all good.
I love a good story time. Is anybody listening and you're like, oh my god, I remember this one time. Hi, Nubuke. I love asking and hearing you say a lot of things. I'm gonna give you the microphone. Oh yeah. Guys, abundance. Scarcity mentality, say no to it, huh?
Yeah, nothing I plan ever works out. So exactly what you're saying about being flexible. I mean, being flexible has put me in some of the bestest situations ever. I think before I say no, I say yes. I think there will get points in my life where I have to say no. But for now, I say yes to almost everything. And I'll give you an example. Like at the beginning of this month, I ended up going for like a nuclear power conference where it was on like nuclear energy. And that's very random for me. I was like, where did these people find me? But I ended up learning about nuclear power and just so many things about Ghana, some of the things that we're working on right now. We have a nuclear energy school. I was like, hey, where are all of these people from? Like, I didn't know that we had this. And so I would say that being open has really changed the trajectory of my career. And I'm rigid with the vision, exactly. Like, I know where I want to go. I know I want to be successful. I know I want to accomplish all of these great things. But I think being open means that you get to make friends, which I love making friends. I love talking to people, collaborating with people. It means you get to learn things about yourself. You get to learn things about others. And so, yeah, that's kind of like my response to that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. The beautiful thing about experience is that it can be codified into process, it could be codified into a framework of how you respond to certain things. Usually on panels, when I ask for a framework, my panelists look at me like I'm crazy. But I think from experience, you kind of construct your ABCs. In this kind of context, what are the first 3 things I do to make sure that 2 weeks from now, I don't realize that the person I'm collaborating with has been moving in a completely different vision, right? Because that is a common reason why we experience stress in collaborations, isn't it? The friction that comes with collaboration, the friction that comes with 2 different perspectives.
Well, I think I'm very well known for letting my opinions be known, which is intimidating to some, but I think that's how I make sure and kind of test as we go along if we're on the same wavelength. Which doesn't mean that I need my opinion to be taken on or a part of the project, but I usually do it to test and see like what the other person is thinking, or to see how open they are to changes, or just to put things out there. So I would say like over communication with collaborators, even, and then just making the distinction between this is just an idea or a brainstorm, and then having other meetings where it's like, no, this is actual, like actionable, you know what I mean? I always like to differentiate between let's just have a little powwow brainstorm where we know like none of these ideas have to make it to actual fruition, and making distinction between like this is a production meeting, this is what we're doing. So I think having those 2 types of discussions is always good with collaborators to make sure you're on the same page, and having those like very regularly. Just have a standing call on the calendar for catch-ups.
Okay. Felix, do you have any ideas? And maybe we hear from Flora after that.
I mean, I think the point that he also makes about like the difference between a brainstorming versus a this is what we're doing kind of meeting. I think it's important to always sort of reset with big picture, right? A lot of times we get lost in the finer details. We need to get this done. We need to be specifically this way. And then that's how you can, I think that's how you get into that lonely mindset. That's how you get into, just losing sight of why are we here in the first place, right? And so again, that sort of big picture thinking, hey, like where are we trying to go? What is the vision here? Sometimes those finer details even become less important once you really dive into that aspect, and you're more willing to be flexible, right? Because you realize, you know what, we're trying to get to point B. So if we take a left or take a right and we still get there, the fact that we get there is the more important thing. Yeah.
But my thing is, as a creative, you most of the time can't really tell me what to do with how I create what I'm creating, And so I understand this maybe on a institutional and like business perspective, but as a creative, if I say I'm coming to create an artwork about cocoa, and it's going to take me 2 months because the inspiration and it has to connect and the soul, or my state of mind is not where it needs to be, and I need to get to a certain place to be able to produce the work for you and all of these things. One will come to you from like the perspective of an institution. How do you reconcile with that relationship with creatives? How do you navigate that? We're going to start with you because you do both. So tell us more about how, maybe, yes, these same principles, but then give us the context about, do these principles stay the same within the context of corporate? And then how do they change in the context of creative, even if it's the same advice?
Well, it changes. Working with artists has been a headache. It has been a headache, I won't lie. And one of the funny aspects is most of my team, they are scattered around the Americas and Europe, and I am the only one in Africa at the moment. And my founder is Ghanaian, but he left Ghana a while ago. And I'll just give you this scenario. We were signing on some artists, and even to get them to respond to an email, wow. I had to follow up with calls, with Instagram messages. The dynamics are totally different. Working with within an institution, you get people who understand, not that artists don't understand the vision, but then they understand the culture, how it works in here. But then it's a whole different thing with creatives. Getting them to sign the contracts, getting them to submit their works and all of that. So we are flexible with them. Like how I said, the follow-up process is quite a lot with the artists, but then with the institutions, with the founders I work with TechinGhana, we know how it works. We have weekly catch-ups, like she said. We have our out of work conversations. An example is the first time my toddler was admitted at the hospital. I didn't know what to do because they were putting the catheter in, he was crying and all of that. The only person I could call was my founder because she has a baby and she has been in that position. So I called her and she made me know how I could navigate that, you see. So having the out of work conversations, but still maintaining professionalism and all of that, yeah.
I don't know if I should look for a creative in the room to defend us because I'm supposed to be non-partisan. Sana, do you think you struggle with replying to emails? Oh, I don't like your facial expression, Sana.
I don't expect emails from artists. I don't expect emails. No. I would love it, and I do send the emails. Do I expect a reply all the time? No, but it will be in writing, yes, from my end.
Well noted.
A little example is citizen projects.
I want to hear. what Senna has to say as a creative when it
About
comes
emails.
to not necessarily emails specifically, but in response to these accusations.
I respond to emails like almost all the time. I'm always on time with emails. And the other thing about contracts, it's not that sometimes artists don't want to sign contracts. Artists do sign contracts, and we want to, we want to make sure that everything.
The contracts are bad.
Well, yes.
Speak your mind.
Yes.
How can we sign that?
Sometimes there are good contracts. Yes, but then I think I just like the whole mix of being able to have a conversation, just a normal random conversation with whoever it is that I am to sign this contract with, maybe go out, go see a movie together. I don't know. Well, I don't know about everyone, but then what I like is I really want to know you. Like, I want to know you before I'll sign a contract. Because there are times that you sign contracts and well, yeah, there's you get stabbed in the back. But well, yeah. Contracts are nice. Sign them when you can. When you don't want to sign the contract, just let the person know that you don't want to sign it. Also, if you want to reply to the email, reply to that email. If you don't want to, I mean, that's your cup of tea. But I reply my emails. Yeah, I reply my emails. Yeah.
I feel like Senna has touched on many key areas. Aida, let's hear from you and what you had to say in relation to that, but also in your approach when engaging with creators. What are the best practices you've come up with?
So one of my favorite parts of my job is working with artists in studio, as well as like as an administrator, helping them streamline the more mundane parts of their practice. Citizen Projects has their first museum loan of the works that we've made this year. However, we are extremely behind on the production of these works. So understandably, the museum, with whom we signed a contract for July 31st, is pissed. Which I am accustomed to. You know, the emails have become very like, you guys need to do this right now. And the artist is responding emotionally. And then it's my job to be like, no, they're well within their rights. We just need to solve this problem and get them the work. So I feel like everyone has to play their role. I understand that artists are very emotional and it's very personal when they're producing work. But then I think that's the role of an administrator to know when it's just business and handle the business side of things and keep the emotions in check so that we get to the final vision, you know?
Any thoughts from the audience? Eldad?
Okay. I have an exercise that I like to do. How many of us are artists in this room? If you're an artist. Okay, let me ask you a question. In the last 72 hours, right? You don't have to tell me. Can you think of anything you spent money on? Maybe like 3 or 4 things. Something that you took money out of your pocket and then you spent money on. Do you have it? Okay. Of all those things, right? Which one of them did you spend money on because you thought the person that created it thought it was cool?
Just raise your hand. If you bought something recently, I like that.
If you spent money on something in the last 72 hours and you're so ready for spending the money because the creator of the thing or the maker or the producer of the thing thought it was cool. Okay, one hand. Okay, how many of you spent money because the thing you're spending money on solved a real problem for you, a need that you had? Okay, so when I'm talking to artists and creatives...
For context, that's 2 hands to about 6 hands, and we have about 6 artists in the room.
Yes, so that's like about like 1.5 ratio. So for context, my wife accuses me that I'm not a true creative, that I'm a businessman camouflaging as a creative. But for context, I studied computer science, started working in design, so I'm very much in the creative. Most of my work still do with like certain kinds of creatives. But when I deal with creatives, I like to explain to them that creatives and artists fundamentally have a philosophical problem, okay? Our philosophy, or your philosophy as a creative or as an artist, is that the thing I'm doing is valuable because I think it's valuable, and it's useful because I think it's useful, regardless of the external context within which it exists or should exist. Does that make sense? So what that leads to is when you're not dealing with entities of people that are business driven and have metrics, those metrics are disregarded because from your philosophical standpoint, taking them into account and trying to cater to them will kill the value of the thing that you're trying to create. Because for you, it's a soul like act. Does that make sense? Now, the problem with that is if you want to ever commercialize, the market is king. That means whoever you're serving and their needs is just as important as the thing you're producing. So the best creatives, the most profitable creatives, they understand this. So either they have been able to make the philosophical adjustment or they build systems around them that shield them from having to deal with that so they can just purely be artists. But here comes the second problem. Many artists and creatives have trust issues with the people that could potentially steward the systems around them that allows them to create in peace without having to interface with the business structures. So you're caught in this position where you have things like that happening where it's like, oh, the museum needs this thing by the 31st, but I'm not done putting my thing together yet. I'm still very much in the dream and I'm still very much in the state, right? So usually the thing I like to advise is I need you to make that philosophical adjustment every time you're trying to produce, especially if there's a commercial underpinning to the thing you're creating. That's where the tension comes from. So when I'm working with any creative at all, so I work with like agency owners, artists, like the first month, we're trying to understand what is your philosophy on what you're creating and how you believe it should interact with the market. And what is the market you're serving? Now, last note, when you're at the tippy top of the pyramid, you get to call the shots. So there are artists that the market make way for. If this is going to take 6 months, the market will wait 6 months. But that is 1 in 10,000, and assume you're not that guy. Okay? Because the people that the market makes those spaces for, they went on a journey to eventually get there, to earn the right to call the shots at that level. But also artists at the very beginning of their journey, or even a little further in, looks at those people and go like, okay, if the museums and the studios and the institutions can make an exception for that person, they're also an artist, and I think I'm just as good and as talented. Why can't they make that same exception for me? The answer is, you haven't earned it yet. Right, so I think there is that philosophical issue that a lot of creative and artists have, that if it's not solved, it creates a lot of tension between their desire to commercialize and get rewarded for their work, and then the need to do something that is, deeply from their soul and untainted by any external factor. So I know that was a bit of a long answer, but yeah.
I have an interesting, maybe I would say question.
Okay.
Not necessarily to you, but just something to think about if any of the other panelists want to say something. I am concerned that in the pursuit of commercializing creativity or creatives, we force them to transition out of being creatives into businessmen, right? So is the philosophy of a creative why we have creatives? And by losing that USP, does it affect the creative industry?
So I want to make another distinction. There's a difference between approaching your artistic practice with discipline and systems in place. There's a difference between that and someone asking you to be a business person. I think the issue is a lot of the time artists don't want to admit that they're not approaching their practice with discipline and systems in place as to how they're going to produce the work that they want to make. How are they going to make sure that the research that they need to get done gets done? That's not asking you to be a business person at all. That's asking you to have some discipline and to get serious. And those artists who you see having success, it's not necessarily because they were Andy Warhol and tried to make everything into a business. It's probably just because they produce in a way that is systematic, disciplined, And then they're able to now collaborate with other people who are able to push their work, with galleries, with institutions, with, in the case of designers, with various like design stores, because they know that they could trust that your practice and your studio runs with some kind of structure. That's not necessarily asking you to be a business person. It's just asking you to stick to some timelines or communicate in a way that people can collaborate with you and help you take your work to different places and sell your work so you can see the return.
Okay.
He has something he wants to say. Just one of the breaks, you.
In a few.
Yeah.
You're going soon. But Felix, what are you thinking? I feel like you're also coming from the creative point, the corporate, slightly more corporate point of view. What are you thinking?
So I think when it comes to sort of the interplay between like art and creation versus money, right, is a bit of a catch-22, right? Because most artists, why does that sound weird? Most artists are likely trying to make a living from their art, right? I don't know if it's most, but any artist that is trying to make a living from their art will be at the mercy of market forces, right? And the sort of bigger you get, the more popular or known you become, the more a slave you are to those forces. And if you, again, are looking to make a living from your art, you will have to bend to those things, right? And you see this a lot, especially in like music, where an artist will come up, they'll make something amazing, so many people will fall in love with their music, and then they go mainstream, right? And people keep like begging for that. I want that original sound, I want that thing, but it's probably never gonna come back because I'm making bank now, right? The mainstream is paying my bills. And so it's that like, damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And so I think ultimately, I definitely don't have the answer to this. I think it's going to be always going to be a problem. But maintaining your sort of your secret sauce, your identity, while appealing to a wider market is always going to be a very fine line to walk.
I want to respond to that. What I've noticed is that comes down to like your actual values as a person. Knowing what the balance is that's right for your practice. How many editions do I want to make? How many collaborations do I want to do on the commercial side versus how much time do I want to spend with my own practice? And that kind of shows like, and it's no judgment, get your money. But you can see who's balancing both and really cares about the core of their practice. And this goes for visual artists as well as musicians. I think at the core, most artists want to make the work that they love. And so you'll see some of them do the commercial, quote unquote, mainstream for a while and then feel like, okay, I want to come back to myself. And then they do. And maybe it doesn't hit, but yeah.
I think technology and the internet is playing a huge role in this as well. I don't know if maybe any of you have noticed that, especially like modern Afrobeat songs are getting shorter and shorter. Now songs are like 2 minutes something. Back in the day, songs used to be 4 minutes something, right? And this again is driven by the market. It's driven by technology because the shorter your song is, the less of it you need to play to get a stream, like, right? So if, I don't know exactly what it is, like if you have to play like half of the song for it to count as a stream, but half of 2 minutes is much shorter than half of 4, right? And you're more likely to have people replay the song. It's a good song, but it's only 2 minutes long. I'm gonna play it 5 times, right? So again, you can see how technology and like the current state of how we distribute art, especially when it comes to music, is influencing the art itself, right? And the format of that art.
So I want to try to summarize like a lot of the thoughts around here, right? I've seen this everywhere, even outside of art. Okay. the more you want to commercialize anything, okay, the more abstracted and diluted it will often get from the core of the original vision. Startup founders suffer this as well. If you go raise a 4 million Series A, your product direction is going to be wildly influenced by your venture capitalist need to have a 10x return on what they're building in the next 5 to 10 years. So as much as we're having an art conversation, it's very much a vision versus commercialization conversation, which is why the value and philosophy thing is very important. I know tech businesses that are doing maybe 10, 20 million a year, but they bootstrapped over 10, 15 years and took no VC, so they get to do whatever the hell they want. But guess what? They are never going to be a unicorn. They're never going to be valued in the market as a billion-dollar startup. They're probably never even going to get the adulation that unicorns get. But they value owning a business that they control more of, that has more space, and that gives them more money, and they are willing to spend longer to build that business. It's the same thing for art. So there's always that tension between when I want to make money from something in a certain way and the demands that external forces put on me in exchange for that money that I'm going to get. So you have to make the decision, like it was said earlier, about how far do I want to go? What's more important to me here, right? Because it's always a spectrum. I'm either going to take a little more money and have a little less soul. I'm going to take, a little less money and have more soul. You can't have your cake and eat it. So if you start with the understanding that there is always that inherent trade-off, then you get to make decisions from a place of personal belief, core systems, and then you are happy with the outcome because you've chosen that outcome, as opposed to being pushed into that because you've not considered that the trade-off exists and you believe that you can have the best of both worlds.
I want to ask a question to Shay.
Yeah.
Shay, thanks. A lot is being said. I want to ask you a question to kind of ground the thinking around this. So coming from the Nigerian conference to Ghana, you collaborated with SunsetConnect. What were some of the trade-offs that you had to make to your vision of how this should go to be able to achieve? Yeah, so I'm saying that we're having a lot of conversation about the spectrum of vision and dinero, money, cashing out. And I'm wondering, I know it's not like a very direct analogy, right? But I'm going somewhere. You coming to Ghana and collaborating with Sunset, is there a way that you had to an extent, compromise on some of the visions and ideas you have for how this should go?
Well, I would say yes. But again, I think someone said earlier on, the most important thing is the vision, because you start from there. But from partnership, it's two different things. And of course, from when we're talking about money, two different things too. Compromise is normal, but you also have to look at it to what extent will it affect me. I think that if you weigh the option and on the scale, if the level at which it will affect you is more than what you benefit from, then you obviously know that, okay, this won't work. I'll make an instance of our own business is bootstrapped. We have absolute no external investment from outside. We have total dominance on it. We would love it to stay that way because what he said, we rather build a value to a stage where when we want to get money in, the value at which you're going to invest in is going to be more money and less equity. I think for me, I've never been that, maybe because I'm dogged, so I've never been that much on the front of I need to raise money now to make more money. I've always been of an opinion of I need the users, I need the customers to, when they buy, the business will stay and we can always grow from there. So that's for that. For partnership side of things, I think from onset, it has always been our vision has to align first, what we are doing and what you're doing, what is the connection between both of it.
you are going to make compromise, I'm going to make compromise. Because again, we're coming from two different perspectives. So our perspective can be right. In fact, it's more like you're looking for co-founder. If you're maybe let's say you're more grounded on finance part of things, your co-founder is more grounded on operation side of things, you both are making compromise on, guy, you know what, everything that has to do with money, leave it to me. So which means that the compromise could be from trust. And it's blind trust. Because at the end of the day, this has led to a lot of companies down for where we've had blind, we trust. Why I said it's blind is because I don't really know your intention, because intention comes from the mind. You know, I don't know what you want to do with the company in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, whether you're going to sell me out or not. So, but I think that compromise comes from both angles. The moment you are the only one compromising, that is when you understand that this is not a deal that will favor me. And I think that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
So very interesting couple of conversations. I like the way the conversations have been going. Because I think the bigger conversation here is, this conversation I was having with my friend recently about how the era of being a purist is dying off. He can't be a purist anymore. And I think it's usually the purists who would largely disagree with the angle or the consensus that seems to be had in this room around losing off on financial value in order to keep your own personal or creative values. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I'll try again. Right, so a purist is usually someone, is what you're saying as a disadvantage, or what is being talked about as some form of disadvantage. The person who creates work because they want to create this work, because that's the vision. And that should not be stained by capitalism. It shouldn't be stained by greed and all of these things. Creativity should remain pure, and that sense of expression should not be stained. Well, the non-purists are, I would say, closer to what is being discussed. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding of purists and non-purists, right? And so, but a part of me is rejecting the conversation, a part of the conversation or the conclusion, because some purists make money. Crazy money. I would even argue that when you get to the creative sector, being a purist might actually be what would make you become, quote unquote, a unicorn, right? But I think there's also, it comes back to also what Aida Hayfron pointed out when she said, we're not asking the creatives to become a business person, we're asking them to become more disciplined. We're not asking them to reject the corporate principles of emails and contracts. We're asking them to know how long something would take. So if you tell me it's going to take 6 months, you need to know yourself enough to know I can create in 6 months. But as a creative, even with all your purest energy, if you tell me 6 months and 6 months comes and you can't, that's a whole different conversation. That's not a conversation about whether you're pure creative or whether you're debatable, but a corporate or more business inclined creative. It's a conversation of, but you're creating for this purpose. Then you have a conversation about how they're entirely different infrastructures when it comes to creative work, where sometimes a creative can find a collector who would pump money to them for 5 years to see how far this artist can go with what they create and what they output. Again, maybe 1 out of 10,000, right? But now I'm curious about how does a creative, and this is a very creative focused question, but how does a creative avoid getting into the trap of feeling like everything is crashing out and they're crashing and burning and they don't think their creativity will take them anywhere because they're pursuing this model, but they're not the kind of artist that knows how to get or sustain themselves from that model?
I wanted to, I don't want to necessarily answer, but I'm so interested in this binary that you pose. I'm curious.
Jason, could we have the microphone?
Hi, you are doing a
Get into
job,
it.
and you are being very, very provocative, but I would love to also hear examples and paradigms for you of who feel like the purists and who feel like perhaps they are, people have had to compromise their integrity for these things. Because I think I love this. And this will also, I think, show so much of your own taste and who you are looking at. So yeah. said stop the neutrality.
Guys, I'm the moderator. What the hell? You see, when you have to name drop, then it's arguable. Yes, please. Okay, let me do one and then see. Don't fight me. But purist, I would mention. Ooh. The general. I would say a purist. Hey, guys, Fela Kuti. Fela Kuti is a purist. He followed no rules, aligned with no institution. He did his own thing from ground up, right? And then he reached an acclaim that is indisputable. And he made money, arguably, but he made money. And some of the biggest institutions were very willing to work with the fella, right? But now the question is, can I get up and say I aspire to be a fella when I grow up? Probably not. And I think that's where it gets a little sticky, where the people who are purists that make it to a certain acclaim, you only realize you can do that after you've done it. And so maybe I agree with the panel that it's not necessarily something that a creative should start off working towards with absolute, linear perspective.
I just want to add that I think that we can only look at Fela and think that he was a purist after the fact. I am sure as his career was going on, there were many times that he considered, do I take this deal, do I not? I would say getting to the acclaim and the respect that someone like Fela has, yes, is because he was pure on the vision. None of us remember if Fela did a wedding somewhere because he needed a check. We don't care. The music remained the same. I think it's the same for artists. That's the balance I'm talking about. Are you compromising on the actual look and feel and idea behind your work for a corporate check? And if so, do that and don't ever post it and we don't need to know. Or are you still sticking on with your vision and your ideas and your creative look and feel? So I don't know. I don't think anyone is a purist. I think we all have bills to pay, even as creatives.
Jason, please keep the mic in the audience. But actually, I don't know if I trust you guys like that. But yes.
This is a super fire conversation, by the way. I think it's incredible. Super incredible. To the point, everybody made really good points, but I do believe that if you want to be a purist in terms of your art form, whatever it is, art, music, whatever, you do have to be a business person or be business minded. You have to, so if you want to keep the soul of what you're doing intact, you're going to need to know how to manage your resources, manage your own personal funding, manage your overhead, know how to allocate certain amounts of funds to your practice and whatever you do, whether music, art, etc. So it's kind of a lot of artists get in sticky situations because they don't understand business. So they just think, hey, I can trust this person to handle my business and I can just be the purist. And then now when things get sticky, you stuck, But if you have that mindset of, I need to have some type of understanding of the things that are gonna fuel my business, which is your art, essentially, whether it's mass commercial or not. I think we've been speaking about Ibrahim. Am I saying his name right? I feel like he's a purist. I think Kanye West is a purist. Yeah. I think these are people that are massively successful, but haven't really shifted their vision. You know what I'm saying? In terms of the quality of their art. They're pure with the vision, right? And then when they did feel like they were going to be put in a position by where, and maybe this is more gay, but if he was put in a position by where he had to give it up, he wasn't bowing down. And so I know for me personally, you can go, and especially, I don't know if the same kind of context here in Ghana, but in America, you definitely have mass market artists, and then you have artists that are a little more, I guess like niche, right? Good word. But in order to be that niche artist you want to be, you gotta understand the business of your, at least your own business, I feel. So everybody's points are really valid, you know, but you can be that niche artist, but you do have to know business at some, you know, at some point.
So is everybody here registered for the event? I want to send you a video essay that you sent to everybody later on.
Oh my God, video essay, yes.
Yeah, but second thing, I think there are two things. There's a case study. Who knows John Bellion? Jon Bellion. He's somebody that I think every artist should go study, okay? Because he did a thing recently where he had a label, right? Woke up one day, decided that he wanted to produce music on his terms and the way he's going to do it, and he wants to play ball. The label canceled his contract for 6 years. But here's the thing. He was so skilled that he found a way to create art for other people that made him a ton of money and got him a lot of Grammys, and he never put anything out himself. In fact, some of the music that he put out, you wouldn't even put it in the same ballpark as something he would ever do, because he would never sing anything like that. But he understood the market enough to know that his ability to write is valuable for other people. So he sold that and waited out the 6 years until his label came back and gave him all the terms he wanted, and is back to making music. That's a purist who figured out leverage and then was able to spend that to get his way. So the thing is, no matter where you fall, right, as an artist, you need to survive, you need to live, you need money. So that's the underlying current of the conversation that we're not calling out. So it may be that you want to keep your art pure, so you're going to work a job.
Which is what I do.
So you can keep the leverage, right? So I think the leverage to earn money and to keep your life going once you pursue your art is very important. So study John Bellion, I think he's becoming a case study in like just artists that has figured out leverage and is doing some really wild stuff right now. And then there's a bunch of essays written about this. So I think, yeah, I'll find a link to anything so they can share with everybody. But I think that's an important thing to note.
Okay, we're gonna close this train of thoughts with two final audience members, their POVs. Victor?
So, it's a very interesting conversation because it sounds regurgitated, right? Because I've heard this so many times, you know, over the last 30-something years, okay? You talk about music getting shorter today. Songs in the key of life. Average song length, 7 minutes, 37 seconds, right? Why do they shorten it? Radio play, right? But nobody can tell me that that's not one of the greatest albums ever put out, right? Who doesn't know Songs in the Key of Life? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Stevie Wonder? Okay, it's one of the greatest albums ever put out there. So the real reason it's gone to 2 minutes, and if we're not careful, it'll go down to 45 seconds, is TikTok, right? That's driving every other thing, because even the streaming algorithm, you know, Spotify is getting in trouble because of that, because they had to change the rules recently, right? Where they had limits on the length of the stories. If you really want to explore this, you have to be a student of history, right? Was Van Gogh a purist? He's insane. He was a lunatic, right? That's what he was, right? And Van Gogh's artwork only became anything in the future because of his brother's wife. The reason we're having this conversation today is because of how many people live on this planet, right? Because an artist cannot go out and find a patch of land, grow food, eat from the land, you know, make his own parchment paper and create art, or like just sit in the, think about this, you talk about musicians, right? The only reason we talk about musicians the way we talk about it is because we have the ability to record the sounds they create. Can you imagine that somewhere today, some kid is behind some electric keyboard creating music that would give you chills to your soul, but you will never hear it because they didn't do what? Record it. So this entire conversation is mind-blowing, and I have no idea where really it goes, because I think, and I'm about to leave because I have to go feed my crack, context later. I will just say this. I think you need to narrow the conversation going forward to create it in the commercial space. Because the minute any of us are sitting here talking about these people, it means they're already out there. If your work is out there, it means that you're willing to put it out there and ask for what? Acceptance, right? Even if you're not asking for money for it, right? But you're asking for acceptance, that means even that whole purist notion, throw it out. Because the minute you are asking one person, the minute it is important for your work to be valued beyond yourself, right? Even if you're creating everything you create, I mean, you have artists like this. I mean, Luther Vandross, every album he did, we all know the stories, right? He's obese when he's in love, he loses weight when he's out of love, right? Every album is to a different lover, right? I mean, and then he throws in a couple of really great little songs in there, like songs for my father and what have you, but every album is dedicated to one person. So he had an audience of one. But it just so that he was so talented that he was speaking to all our souls, right? But I think for this conversation to be really beneficial, which is I think part of the whole value of this, to young creatives and stuff, it has to be grounded in that foundation of the commercial. Like that means that this is a creative person who's decided that I'm gonna sell my work. Not sell out, but I'm gonna sell my work. I'm gonna take that risk. The same way a founder of a business will take that risk to say that, hey, I have this vision and I need to move it forward, and I hope people will buy into it, right? The last thing I wanna say is, the reason people are lonely, right, is because a lot of times you create a vision that is so singular, and also because you are so stuck in believing that you have such a unique idea, right, that you don't want to let anybody else in. If we want to go back to even this notion of startups, Apple, IBM, none of them were truly started by one person. Zuckerberg, all these people, they had people holding them in tow, so they didn't get lonely. And it also means what? On a business level, it mitigated what? Key man risk. Because what's the point of having a great idea if it doesn't live beyond you? Thank you.
The gentleman in the back wanted to say something.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. So, quick one. I wanted to ask a question about this purist issue, but I want to bring it down to Ghana. Okay, two artists, example, Kwesi Arthur and Shatawari. So, a few months ago, people started saying that Kwesi is being fake. Right now, his music is not giving them like what he used to give them before. But Kwesi have moved from the street guy to wear Ireland. Now he have knocked down some Ireland girl, and that is the level he is now. Like, do you understand? And for me, I feel like he's being pure because my understanding is musicians, we use what is happening around us to tell a story. And you mentioned Fela Kuti. Fela Kuti is talking about how how they're oppressing him and his family, his mother, they threw him away from the window and things like that. Yeah. That is what is happening to him. Okay, let's go to Shatawari. Shatawari is singing street song. Okay, he's the, like I say, dancehall king and he's the street king. But he's not a street guy. Like, he have Lamborghinis and he's living in a nice mansion and like he have ACs and eating proper food, but he's still singing, oh, I be there street, the hustle. You know the street, you know the hustle. Like, do you understand? And but people are saying that Shatta is like he's a pure artist, he's talking from his heart and things, but he's not there. Somebody that have moved from the street and now living in US, flying planes and is saying what he's experiencing, people are saying that now you're being fake. Oh, what I fell in love with the Kwesi Arthur is not the Kwesi Arthur I'm seeing now. But he have moved and he's telling you that you need to move along with me, if not. So which is which right now? Sorry, I just wanted to. Thank you.
that's dope. Like, here's the thing. If you're an artist, right, like the gentleman said before he left, the market decides. Do you understand? Like, here's what I mean. Let's say Shatawale's message, right, or who it is, the identity is created. Whoever is listening to him has bought into that idea. And as long as he continues to give them what they want by pushing that idea, they will continue to give him back the validation that he needs. The issue, the Kusata issue that you mentioned is that when he started, the narrative is like, me and you with the streets. I'm one of you. Grind day with the top guy, right? Like, that's the basis on which the market accepted him. Now, the thing about art is that we consume art as a reflection of our soul. So when somebody's saying something in a music about heartbreak, he's not just speaking for himself, he's speaking on my behalf. Now, when they switch up, it feels like my advocate has abandoned me. This is the person who was the representative of the struggle that we all identified with collectively. And now he's just left us. The reaction to that is like, bro, you're being fake. Because when you came to me, that wasn't the promise you made me of who you are. That wasn't what I bought into. Now, artists always change. So it's your job to be okay with that change. Or you can keep singing the song for the masses that they want and keep making the money and keep receiving the adulation. But it's not an issue of like which is better than what. Like we said, it's an issue of what do you want, what outcome do you want? And then you pick that outcome. But the thing about art is when you create art, like the market picks what is going to fly, what will go viral and what doesn't. There are like millions of videos created every week. What determines which one goes viral? Like as much as people can come and say they engineer virality, it's a myth, right? Like the market decides what goes viral. So I think if you understand that to some extent, then the identity shift and the reactions that people have to it will make a little more sense. But the Kwesiata situation is because like when he came out, we identified with him in a certain way and we don't recognize who he is right now. And people are just like reacting to that. But that's what I think. Seems like there's some thoughts around the panel, so let's get those.
I would say that I feel that sometimes we're very selfish in the way that we consume art, music specifically. And we see artists as this like static, or want them to be this static, unchanging thing, right? I started listening to you because I love your sound. Why are you evolving as a human being, right? Why are you growing and becoming better and more whatever? Don't do that. Just make the thing that I want you to make, like, you know? And I think that's just, it's a function of being human. It's a function of consumerism, I would say. In the sense that, again, you know, I like my strawberry banana smoothie that I get from the store. They recently added kiwi. What the hell, right? Yeah, I think we're never going to get away from that. I think that ultimately human beings are just going to want the things that they want in the ways that they want them. And we'll always feel shortchanged or what have you when the person isn't doing the thing or making the thing in the same way that they used to. It's just, I think it's just being human. Yeah.
Just to add on to that, you know, we all listen to songs depending on our mood. So what if there's another person who is enjoying what Kwesiata is bringing out now? So let's not be selfish.
Yeah, before you come out, I actually wanted to also, the example, or a good example here is The Weeknd. So I love the trilogy. The first 3 albums are just magnum opus, the best thing ever, right? And so as he sort of he went into his like low Michael Jackson phase, and then he's, you know, done a few different things. A lot of people are clamoring for, we want that old trilogy sound back. And he was super honest and said, I can't go back to that place. I'll probably kill myself. I'll probably die. I'll probably take all the drugs and die, right? The Weeknd. Yeah. He can't go back there, right? And he was like, if you really like that sound so much, just go listen to the songs again. Like, they're still there. Like, the music hasn't disappeared. So, yeah.
I think what you're saying is familiar to what I just want to say. I want to use Wizkid as an instance. I don't know how many people listen to him. But his first album, Ojuelegba, I can't remember the name of the album. I think Hayo, that's the first album. a lot of people fell in love with the first album. He released something, one EP, sound system, I can't remember, very slow sound music. You know, a lot of people were questioning, bro, this is not what I fell in love with. But the question, what he said, is very familiar word. I'm creating for myself. So it is more like a moving train. It's either you join the train. So over time, because again, change is constant. The moment this artist doesn't change, they even lose some audience that have changed. So there are some audience that are complaining about this so-called artist, while there are some audience that are glad that it changed. So you lose some, you win some, that's the way it is. But the most important thing is that, which is a very important question is, does he love the moment he is currently is? The moment he's in love with it and is making money from it, I promise you, whether you love him or not, doesn't matter. That's what? That's still impure. Well, I mean, on the artist side, it's just the market. Yeah, so I get it. But again, you know, it's, especially music artists, right? For them, it's about mood, it's about, change, it's about trend. Do you get it? At some point, some Nigerian artists wanted to be in the, the American diaspora, wanted to feature like Ghana, but you can't feature those guys playing, singing the gang. You have to, I don't know if that makes sense, you know. You have to, for them to, you know, okay, so let me use Thames as an instance. There's Thames, there's Stewart Savi, there's Ayastar. If you look at Ayastar and Thames, you know, they came into, their breakout is like almost in the same. But if you look at the feature Thames as probably hard, you know, and it's because of the sound. You may be surprised in the next 5 years. She may change the sound. Do you get? But the Thames we fall in love with now, we are enjoying it. But in the next 5 years, we never can tell. But the most important thing, that's what I said, for me, I think what's very important is the artist has to enjoy the moment they are in because they are the creator.
I love how we've all agreed that he's the artist. POV is God, is king. Where the sun is setting, favorite part, because now it gets more vulnerable, more emotional. But we're gonna do a little shift. Aida has to leave us. But she has brought some beautiful insights on prioritizing the artist. And I'm going to hope that the audience can feel her shoes. Could we give her like a little round of applause? Thank you so much, Aida, for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think in closing, I'm glad we can agree that we like artists who operate with integrity, and I think that is the difference between good artists and those that we respect and those that we don't. So, thank you guys.
Excellent. Are we good? Y'all need water. I think we need water. A drink. We're gonna bring it home to Ghana. We've had some very energizing conversations. We kind of understand the kind of pain points in the rooms. We understand the things that are most critical for our audience to digest. But some of the things I want to ask one final question. One final question to bring everything to a nice close. The transparency is something that I feel, or that according to we're talking about the survey. And so transparency is something that came up a lot in relation to founders and the relationships they have with the investors. If we can know more about what our investors want from us and believe that it's for the good, then we would be able to operate as founders and exploit some of their investments more reasonably. Of course, we're going to bring that a little bit more to the creative POV, but I wanted to ask, in your closing remarks and your personal experiences, how has transparency either supported your journey as founders and creators, or how has it taken away, depending on how it manifested in your context?
So I would go back to my RDO founder. I mentioned we were supposed to launch in June, in July, ending of July, but it's been moved to September. Transparency with investors. I want to, just a second, you can go out back.
Okay. So I'm assuming transparency here means just clarity of intent that's communicated between the two parties, right? Here's kind of what I've learned and what I try to tell founders, business owners, everybody I'm talking to. I think you have to get brutally honest about what's actually going on whenever you're taking money from anybody for anything. Okay, one of the things I do is help founders like work through their fundraising process, right? So we need to put decks together, we need to tell the stories. And what I always like to tell them is that whoever is giving you money, they have a few reasons. Chief of them being, they want to multiply that money as quickly as possible. And they think you're the best vehicle to do that. Or they have, quote unquote, an agenda, a moral imperative, a philosophical stance that they're trying to push through the world, and they believe backing you and backing your work is what does that. You're falling in one of those two categories. Okay? So being very clear on which of those relationships you're getting into, I think helps founders navigate that relationship a lot easier. What usually happens is founders take money or take investment and don't seem to interrogate the intention behind why they are being given the money. So I would recommend the best way to transparency is, if you can, confront that conversation at the root. Why are you giving us this money? Like, what is your intention? What are you hoping to get out of it? If you're not clear on that, you will always buy the story of why they're giving you the money. And then when the demands start rolling in later on, you're going like, oh, that's not what I signed up for. But it's because in the early stages, you were too scared of losing the fund that you didn't poke enough to really understand, hey, why are we taking this money, right? So it happens everywhere. NGOs, for-profit, grants. I'm like, I need to know. Like, why are you giving me this money? Why is it important, right? So I think that's, for me, is the number one thing. And once you have that conversation, you can decide, okay, does it go with my value? Yes, no. Do I want to compromise? Yes, no. Now, the person you're taking the money from, the investor may not always tell you the truth. So the same way the investor will, what we call due diligence on you, you do the same due diligence on them. Who have taken money from them in the past? What have they funded? How did those projects go? How did these programs go? I need to know. So you have 2 layers of verification. Confront the conversation and then conduct your own due diligence by figuring out what they funded in the past and having conversations with the people in those programs or those incubators or those ventures to figure out, okay, am I hearing the truth here? And does my vision align with what they want to do? And do I want to take the money or not? Now, even if visions don't align, but I need the money, then I'll take it, but I know what I'm taking and I know what's coming. So I think the issue is we don't do that early assessment. So when the real intentions start, dropping later down the line, because now we're in the contract, we feel betrayed. And I'm like, no, bro, that was on you. Like, I think the fear of losing that fund made you say yes too quickly without pushing back to see what do they really want, right? Because I don't believe the person who's giving you the money, as much as I would like it, they have no moral obligation to tell me their entire truth, right? So that's kind of like my stance on that. So I put the responsibility back on you a little bit to like do that work and hope that whoever you're dealing with, has your best interest at heart. But you have to kind of assume they don't and then dig further.
Yeah. So coming back to my RDU founder, one thing we learned along the way was to question our investors. And we have a fantastic relationship with our investors. I think it's a rare situation. We are able to have an honest conversation with them. They also have that honest conversation with us. Like when we had to push the launch date, We presented why it needed to be done. And as human as they are, even though the money is very important, they had to understand, and we came to a compromise. So to agree with what he's saying, that communication, that brutally honest conversation is very important. And if you can have a relationship with your investors, that also goes a long way to help.
So let me just add a little bit to that. I've not raised money before, but I mean, I have friends that probably in this space. But I think the base to all of this, to buttress their point, is to eradicate desperation. Because I think it's the fundamental part where we all make the errors of ask questions. Because first, I need the money. It's more like a beggar that needs money to eat. He doesn't care whether the money you are giving to him or her is needs or not. I just want to eat. Now, when I'm filled, and I'm like, oh, where's the money from? You get what I'm saying? And that's why it's always advisable that if you can raise from immediate friends and family, do that. Have base that would eradicate the desperation part of it first. Now, that is where you can have a civil conversation with your investors, where you can ask, okay, I would love to know why you're giving us this money. Because we're very honest, at early stage when you need money to survive the business, those things doesn't even come to mind. What is coming to your mind is, how will I convince this person to give me this money? So I think if you can first deal with the basic, which is the not being desperate and all of that, I think all of this will yield fruit. But I think if you don't deal with the basic, I promise, you may forget, and you may have sold about, the equity. Then next 5 years, now realizing that, wow, did we have to sell this much to actually to make this much? Maybe not, maybe yes, you never can tell, but yeah.
So I'm actually gonna approach this from a completely different angle, but I think sort of dovetailing with what Shay just shared. I've done a lot of work in the entrepreneurship space. I've been a founder, I've run an accelerator, I've worked in VC, and so I've seen a lot of success and not so success stories. And so what I would say actually is, you don't always need money, right? Most founders, you talk to them like, oh, well, what's the number one thing you need? We need investment. Everybody wants investment. But a lot of these companies don't need it. And even if they do need funding, VC funding is tricky and dangerous as hell. Because VC optimizes for growth and only growth, right? They just want to see that 2x, 5x, 10x in however many years. And so it will drive you to make certain business decisions that ultimately are not in the best interest of the long-term success of your business, but rather just how can we quickly show and demonstrate growth to our investors so that we keep getting the money or we keep getting the support. And so yes, friends, family, and fools are the first people that you should talk to about sort of raising money. The fools are very important. And if you do, decide to go down the path of VC, I think you need to be very honest with yourself, right? So I think the transparency there is actually with yourself. You have to know what you're getting into and be prepared for what comes with it, right? You also need to have like a pretty solid roadmap of where am I going to get to within what amount of time, how long do I want to maintain this relationship with an investor. Some investors are very hands-off. Here's the money, figure it out. We'll check back in every quarter. We'll look at your balance sheet or what have you. Others are a lot more hands-on. They want to even have like an influence in the decision-making of the business. They want to influence the direction that you take the business. So again, you need to be very, very well educated and well informed about the kind of investment that you're going with. Is it, again, just straight up money investment? Is it like an acceleration program or an incubation program? What have you? And you need to then determine which of those is the right fit for your business. And again, sometimes you don't need the money.
One more thing. So talking about fool's money. So if it's a great time to be an artist.
It is. Our economy is up.
It's an incredible time to be an artist because, for better or worse, art has become the ultimate avenue for virtue signaling. Okay? And the thing about virtue signaling is, as long as I get to point to the thing, I don't care how the money is used. All right? So, over the last, 6 months, 8 months, I've been part of different programs as coaches where entities, businesses are throwing like £10,000, £15,000, like $15,000 at artists because the creator economy that artists drive is the new wave that every business is expected to be at the forefront of. So everybody has a $1.5 million budget that they're throwing around on different continents just to keep them in the game. That is a classic example of fool's money. So this is where you also have to be like not too idealistic about the resources and the things you need to grow. So you find out what programs are giving away 10K, 15K, 7K a pop that requires me to be a part of a 6-week accelerator and go pitch that way. It's a grant. The only requirement is you produce work. They don't really have a say on what work you produce and whatnot. So like it's a great time to be an artist because I'm telling you, everybody from international organizations to government institutions to like corporate institutions, if you're doing anything in green sustainability or art and creative, bank. If you're doing both, hallelujah. Like you're going to pray to money, okay? So like it's a very important thing. You also have to find out where the gaps are and take advantage because there's always this leverage, these spaces for leverage in the market and the way things are moving. So if you're an artist, just to let you know from what I've seen and things I've been a part of, there's a lot of money being thrown at you right now because you validate somebody's need to feel like they are the forefront. Now, that may not make you feel good if you're like the purist, this must mean something all the time, every time. But if you can stomach it and you can kind of validate the program to see what the agenda is and it's not too far from your own values, there's money for grabs. So just FYI.
Beautiful, thank you so much for that. Just to buttress that, you would find more information about how creativity has been centered today on the World Economic Forum reports. I adore reading WEF annual reports because they show what corporate trends are globally. They've interviewed 11 million plus businesses, CEOs across 50 plus industries, so you can really rely to a large extent on the kind of trends that they are saying. The most recent one from 2025 was talking about infrastructure, technological changes, and I think the economic crisis, of course, on how it's shaping. And we've seen it throughout this year, how even with the creative sector, there's a decline in purchases above 50,000. Investments at that scale is dipping, but there is a rise in below 500,000 investments in the creative sector. So you can be able to study some of these trends and kind of know how you want to pitch. And even if a corporate doesn't know that that's what they need, you have something to tell them that's, bro, are you not on Earth right now? Because most of them don't know too much about the arts and cultural space. And so you can help introduce and be the solution to a corporate, and that's a beautiful opportunity right now. Do we have any questions from the audience? Any thoughts, any remarks, any concerns?
Hi everyone, how are you? Lovely to meet you all and thank you so much for the insight. My name is Joseph. I'm part of the good old Trance team. My question boils down to, I think the main theme I've seen during our building discussions is compromise. Compromise for both the creator, artist, compromise from both the business standpoint, the investor. So as a creator or yes, I think a creator is the right word. Where do you toe the line on compromise? Because you have to compromise a bit of, be it your work, yourself, what it is you're trying to put out there to the world, you being a purist, the word that was being thrown out there, or you being a commercial artist. Because there is a border, there is a line. When do you determine yourself that you're willing to cross that line or set the benchmark for that line? And likewise for the business standpoint or for the investor standpoint, what is that benchmark? What is that line of compromise? Are you willing to say, you know what? I have no budget for whatever artist I'm working with, I just want them to be themselves? Or do you say, hey, look, I want you to create 3-4 works every month that can bring me about $60,000 every single month, and this is what I expect from you. And hoping the artist is also able to compromise and fit within the scope of work. Yeah.
I think my answer is as much as you can tolerate to achieve your outcomes and not compromise your soul. And that line is different from everybody. Even if it's a business, your soul in this case might be your own values, right? So as much as you can tolerate to achieve the outcomes that you have determined are important to you without compromising your soul and your values. So unfortunately, you get to determine where that line is. There's no external metric for that. So that would be like the way I would think about it.
What I add is that you should always give yourself an out. I think Shay mentioned desperation, and it's messy. For me, what I've been able to do is have a corporate job. So I don't need the money right now, because I got my own money. And so when I sit with a collector and I decide what I want to make from an artwork, I'm able to be creative in business. I'm able to come up with some weird schemes for my collectors. I don't want to get into it, but I can sell the same artwork in 3 different ways. I can afford to test things like that because I don't need the money right now. I can afford to cold message people who look like they have a lot of money and they like life, but they aren't collecting it because I saw their Instagram. And I can DM them from wherever they are in the world and convince them to invest in my art. You can do things like that when you've given yourself room, to breathe. And when you can do that, I think then you can see more clearly where your line is, because sometimes the line is a mirage. It's a mirage of desperation. Do we have any more thoughts? Any more questions from the audience?
Just to what you said, I think for everything that you do as a creator, as a founder, as an aspiring one, the base part of it is if you can do it at a stage where there is no fear of losing, because the fear of losing is what gives birth to desperation of what if I lose this, what if I lose that. If you are able to start on experimenting different things, it helps you to understand different perspectives and angles of, okay, I think let me not go to this direction. So when you fully go into that thing, you've done a lot of experimentation, and it helps to put different perspectives into things. Just to add to what she said. Yeah.
Any questions from the audience? Any additions, any comments? You can tell us congratulations for 1 year. Thank you guys so much for sitting it out. We always appreciate your time and your insights. Definitely gonna be another one in December, but I'm gonna give, thank you panelists. If you have any final thoughts, any hoo-has, any, woohoo, thank you so much for having us.
There's something I said. I spoke at a conference last 2 weeks, I guess. I was leaving the gym, and I think that word just came to me. The word is who your mind is. You're the true reflection of who your mind is. I think everything you become, you will become. You have become. It's a reflection. It's a what's it called? It's a reflection of your mind. And it's important that you work on your mind, because it is a driver of whatever it is that you'll become as a person. So it's always important that, of course, life is going to throw so many stones at you. But I think the most important thing is be courageous, be resilient, be driven, and be disciplined. When you have core value as a person, the thin line that we'll be talking about, you won't cross it, because again, there's some things that no matter how much advice you get from an external person, you are the person that can make that decision and can make that happen. Yeah, thank you, and it's nice to meet everyone.
Just to add on to what he said, the Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he. So there's that, and there's also the issue of your values. You have to be firm in your values. Know who you are, know what you're trying to put out there, and there's no harm in seeking for help. Sorry, but the report also said that there were a lot of founders that had issues with seeking for help. There is nothing wrong in seeking for help or admitting to yourself that at this point, I really need help. Who in my team can I speak to? Who outside my team can I speak with? Be part of a community. It's also something that's really important. Be part of a community. Attend events. If it's a networking event and all of that, you meet like-minded people who might just say a few things to you that would just make your year, your entire year. It might be just one phrase from someone, or there might be something someone does that just makes you know that you are not alone in this, and there's someone else going through the same thing I'm going through, and maybe the person even has a remedy for you. So there's that, and embrace the chaos and you definitely figure a way out of it. Thank you.
So I have 2 words: care and serve. On some fundamental level, we're all trying to make money. That's what it comes down to. A lot of the conversations that I had, a lot of the relationships we're trying to build, is always in some quest to try and make money first, before other things. And that journey, at least when I hear people talk about it now, it sounds very selfish. I want to make this much money. I have this thing I want to sell. This person needs to buy it from me. But in my experience, I found that the best way to make money is to care and serve. Care for the spaces you're in, care for your team, care for whoever is contacting you, care about what they want, and serve them in the best way possible. If those 2 things are true, you usually get leverage to be able to make money. But I think that typically for me is the most helpful thing when it comes first. Whether you're building a big business or just one person, right? So even if you're building a big business, like, who are you trying to serve? What's your audience? Like, you care about them. What are their needs? You understand them. That's what leads to you creating products and services that they want to buy, which then gives you leverage to collect money. It works everywhere. So in this quest that we are all on to build wealth, make money, create cool things in the world, wherever you find yourself, whoever you're dealing with, care deeply and honestly about them and serve them to the best of your abilities. I think money comes after that.
I think everybody's given some last words, so now I feel like I have to say something. But I mean, honestly, I would just sort of reiterate the point around the people that you surround yourself with, the team that you build. Maybe in the creative space, sometimes it's not a team, it's just your friends, your collaborators, what have you. And I think this is true in life and in business, and I'm sure in the creative world as well, is that the people that you surround yourself with truly shape your life, shape your outlook, shape where you can go. And so again, be very, very discerning when you build that community, team, group of people around you, because it really will be the make or break.
What I will say is the biggest insights I've taken away from today's call, and thank you so much for the panelists and the audience for being interactive, is it's important for us to find where on the spectrum of purists and non-purists that we lie. Because I think that kind of leads into knowing how to implement a lot of the advice and frameworks and solutions that we've discussed throughout today. If you're more inclined to make the big bucks, you need to know how far away you are from being a purist. And so when you're making a decision, you know where to rank that. And if you're closer to passion and the vision, you need to know or be familiar with the potential consequence of falling in love with the passion and, the vision. And that's my biggest takeaway from today. Thank you guys so much. Thank you everybody for your time. Please get home safe. The world is crazy right now. Jason, let's hear a little bit from you.
So again, as you said, very big thank you to everybody for making it today. I wish some of our audience from earlier was still around. I think it would have made for a really healthy mixer after. But once again, thank you everybody for coming and engaging in conversation. A big thank you to all our panelists. Very big thank you to Lafa for letting us organize this year. This is our 3rd edition of SunsetConnect this year. We will be 1 year old, next month. It's been an incredible journey. Thank you to all of you who've made it to at least 90% of our events. Des, Vic, Laura, Senna, Kwabna wasn't here earlier. Shout out to him as well. That was fantastic. It's been amazing. Stay tuned. Our 4th edition for the year will be out. We'll start promoting and all that soon. A very big thank you to our partners for today.
UnwindFest / Yellow Life HQ. It's been a lovely experience. Remember, there's a bar. Grab a drink, have some conversation. There's still a couple stragglers around, so you can get something to speak about. Thank you.